Well, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is resisting calls from within his own party to resign, at least for now, over a lockdown scandal that's prompted several letters of no confidence. Joining us live is the former Foreign Minister and former High Commissioner to the UK, Alexander Downer. Mr Downer, good to see you this evening, your time. So, can Boris survive, in your opinion?
I think it's very much touch and go. It's hard to answer that question. The chances of him avoiding a no confidence vote in his own party are rapidly diminishing. I think there's every chance he'll have to face a no confidence vote. I think, though, he's likely in the short term to win it because the alternatives are not really coming forward at this stage. And ultimately, you don't just get rid of a leader, you have to replace the leader with someone else. And there's no candidate who is at this stage emerging as a probable successor.
I was going to ask you about that too. I mean, the Chancellor, Liz Truss, couple of names that are thrown about. Is there anything solid behind that?
Yes, they have supporters. So Rishi Sunak is the Chancellor. It's like the treasurer, as we would say in Australia. But the problem with him is a very able man and a very good performer, but he would be seen as being too inexperienced. Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, the woman who negotiated the free trade agreement with Australia, a good, strong performer, but would she be strong enough to be the Prime Minister? And then there are people like Michael Gove. He's a possibility. The Home Secretary, a woman called Priti Patel. They're all viable candidates, but the party certainly isn't at this stage rallying around any one of them. So my guess is that Boris Johnson, I might be wrong, by the way, because the situation is very volatile, that he's likely to last for a little while. But he will really be struggling to see it all the way to the next election.
The problem is, I mean, they're going to have to sort this out, and pretty fast too, wouldn't you agree? Because they've got a pandemic to deal with, they've got restrictions easing, they've got a whole bunch of problems. Meanwhile, this is the only story, Boris Johnson's future, that's kind of cutting through at the moment. So they want to try and sort it out, don't they?
Well, of course, yes. In terms of a story, it's for the government, for the Conservative Party, it's a very bad story. For the Labor Party, the main opposition party, it's a very good story. But I think, look, they don't have an election due for very nearly 3 years from now. So in that sense, they do have a lot of time. And by the way, when it comes to the pandemic, you're seeing the numbers of infections falling very fast now in the UK, and such restrictions as there have been, which have been very limited, they're all being lifted next Wednesday. So people are really very much getting life back to normal in the UK now.
I do want to get your thoughts on that and compare that to our experience too. So Boris has he's had his failures, but he's had some success too when it comes to vaccines, rapid test orders, and over here our government hasn't had much success, at least in the early stages when it comes to those 2 points. What have you made from afar about the huge issues here that we had at Christmas? We had the long queues, rising numbers, supply chain logjams. Is that our government's fault?
Look, every country has wrestled in slightly different ways. They're not all exactly the same, but every country has wrestled with the COVID pandemic. I mean, it's brought to the fore a whole series of issues that previous generations of politicians haven't had to deal with. So, I think to be fair to governments, they've flown pretty blind through all of this. They haven't been quite sure what to do. So I don't think when, ultimately the account is done, in 2 or 3 years' time, Australia will have been seen to have done too badly. There have been huge restrictions on civil liberties, which I personally don't approve of. But look, people just haven't quite known what to do. So I wouldn't be too critical of governments day by day over how they've wrestled with this. And in the case of the UK, they did an exceptional job in terms of the rolling out of the vaccines. And they have a more libertarian instinct in the UK than in Australia. So they don't like all these restrictions and lockdowns and things as much as, so, for example, in Victoria, people love them.
Alexander Downer, good to get your insights, your thoughts too, this evening, your time. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
It's a pleasure. It's a great pleasure.